Tom fidgeted in bed. A creepy feeling had taken hold of him, and he couldn't shake it. The darkness felt heavy, like it was pressing down on him. He pulled his blanket tighter, trying to get rid of a chill he couldn't see. His heart pounded like a drum against his ribs. He tried to tell himself it was just the old house. Old houses creak and groan, he thought, but that didn't stop his mind from racing. The shadows in the corners seemed to twist and turn into scary shapes in the little bit of moonlight coming through the window. A low rumble of thunder made him jump. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. The storm outside felt like the storm inside him. He just wanted to sleep, to escape the scary feeling in his room. But sleep wouldn't come. Fear held him tight, and he was wide awake and scared. Suddenly the bedside lamp flickered. It buzzed, making strange shadows dance on the walls. Tom gasped as the light went out completely, leaving him in total darkness. Panic filled his chest, making it hard to breathe. Then he heard whispers. Quiet, unclear murmurs seemed to crawl from under his door. He couldn't hear the words, but the sound made shivers run down his spine. They were close, way too close. Something or someone was right outside his room. He listened hard, every sense alert. The whispers went on, making the silence even scarier. A floorboard creaked in the hallway, slow and deliberate. Someone was out there, watching, waiting. Tom's breathing got faster. He had to know, had to see what was hiding in the shadows. He threw off the covers and got out of bed, his bare feet touching the cold wooden floor. The hallway was a tunnel of darkness, with only a little moonlight from the window at the end. Every step Tom took made the floorboards groan, the sound loud in the quiet. He held his breath, listening for any sound. The whispers had stopped, but the scary feeling stayed. A cold sweat covered Tom as he crept down the hallway, each step slow and unsure. The shadows seemed to reach out for him, like long, bony fingers. He touched the wall, his fingers brushing against the rough wallpaper and picture frames. The familiar things didn't make him feel better. They felt cold and strange in the darkness. He reached the end of the hallway, his heart pounding in his ears. The whispers were gone, replaced by a silence so deep it felt alive, and then he saw it. And at the end of the hallway, hidden in the darkness, stood a figure. It was tall and skinny, its shape barely visible in the gloom. But what scared Tom most were the eyes, 2 points of evil light glowing with a strange, unnatural brightness. They stared through the darkness, holding him with a look that felt old and evil. Tom froze, unable to breathe. Pure terror held him still. The figure didn't move, its glowing eyes staring into him like it was looking into his soul. He wanted to scream, to run, but he couldn't. The figure started to move, gliding silently towards him, its movement strange and unnatural. Tom stumbled back, his hand reaching for the wall. As the figure came closer, the hallway got colder. A freezing cold surrounded him, sinking deep into his bones. He could feel the creature's icy breath on his face, smell the stink of decay and something else, something truly awful. The cold grew stronger, wrapping around Tom like a blanket. It wasn't just the air. It was a deeper, colder feeling coming from the figure. It went into his bones, into his very center, turning his fear into a numb dread. He tried to speak, to yell, but he couldn't. The glowing eyes held him captive, getting brighter and brighter. He was lost in their depths, drowning in a sea of cold, never-ending terror. The smell of decay got stronger, filling his nose. It smelled of rot and death, of something long dead and best left forgotten. But under that there was something else, a sickly sweet smell that made him want to throw up. His vision blurred, his senses overloaded. He was about to faint, to give in to the creature's icy grip. But even as darkness threatened to swallow him, a deep need to survive burst inside him. Adrenaline rushed through Tom, shaking him out of his frozen terror. He had to escape, had to get away from this thing. He turned to run, his heart pounding like crazy, but as he turned, an invisible force slammed him against the wall. He yelled in pain, As his shoulder hit the plaster, the air forced from his lungs. He fell to the floor, his back scraping against the rough surface. He looked up, his eyes wide with panic. The figure was still there, its glowing eyes burning with an evil grin. It hadn't moved a muscle, and yet something had stopped him. Something invisible and incredibly strong. He was trapped. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The hallway seemed to get smaller, the walls closing in, choking him. Tom scrambled back, his hands grabbing at the smooth wooden floor. He kicked out wildly, trying to get away from the creature, but it was no use. He was caught in a web of terror he couldn't break free from. The figure glided closer, moving smoothly and easily. It moved like a predator playing with its food, enjoying Tom's fear. He could feel the creature's cold, rotten breath on his face, smell the decay that hung around it. His back hit the wall, and he couldn't go any further. He was trapped, cornered. He breathed in ragged gasps, his chest tight with terror. He squeezed his eyes shut, unable to look at the creature anymore. He waited for the end, for the cold hand of death to take him. But instead, he felt something cold and bony grab his wrist. Tom's eyes snapped open. The creature hadn't moved. It was still standing a few feet away, its glowing eyes fixed on him, but the grip on his wrist stayed. He pulled, but it held tight, like a metal clamp. Then he heard it, a low growl, deep and threatening, coming from somewhere behind him. He turned his head, trying to see what held him, but the hallway was empty. There was nothing there. The grip tightened, and he yelled in pain. He fought against the unseen force, his fear turning into desperate anger. He wouldn't give up without a fight, even if it meant fighting the shadows themselves. The growl got louder, vibrating through the air, through him. He could feel his fear being pulled out of him, sucked into the invisible thing that held him captive. He was being emptied, hollowed out, leaving only an empty shell. Tom's struggles got weaker. The unseen force was draining him, pulling him down into a bottomless pit of terror. He could feel himself slipping away, his hold on reality fading. He saw the creature one last time, its glowing eyes burning with evil joy. And then everything went black. He was gone, swallowed by the shadows, his screams echoing in the silence. The hallway stood empty, the only sound the creaking of the old house and the sad howl of the wind as the storm raged outside. But something was different. The air felt heavier, colder, as if an ancient evil had soaked into the walls, waiting for its next victim. The night had won.